okay, what are we doing next year?
I mean, I had a guy that made, on average, like 250,000 a year. And then the year that he retired, because of all of the different pieces that were hitting, it was 950.
At least the education side, when we meet clients, like, why are we selling in the markets kind of slightly down? One of our clients bought his church in Oregon.
Really? From the QCD?
The Oregon was like $100-something thousand.
But there are things that can't be missed. Welcome to this episode of Fuchs Around and Cal Them Out. I am your co-host, Ben Fuchs.
I'm your other co-host, Alex Cal.
Great. Okay. So what are we talking about today?
Talking about end-of-year planning.
God, are we there yet?
We're almost there. Starting to get into Thanksgiving. I know the holidays are big. You know, things start to slow down. It gets a little colder.
Screw that.
You don't like the cold?
I actually don't mind the cold. You know this, I think. I grew up in Tennessee, then I came to Connecticut, and then I went to originally school in Southern California, and then I lived with a grandmother in Northern California, and then I spent like 4 years in Arizona, almost 5.
So all hot weather for you?
I mean, so it's like been everything, right? Like I've gotten like torrential downpours in Tennessee. I got the cold in Connecticut. I have whatever you call California weather with
wildfire weather?
Yeah, nice and dry. And then like Arizona's even worse, but they've already killed all their trees, so it doesn't matter. But I like the seasons, and I'm also happy when they're done. Is that how?
Kind of. The one thing I don't like is I hate the cold.
Really?
Especially here in our Middletown office. You look out the window, you see the
I was going to make a
river.
joke about your heritage and assume that because of that you really like the cold.
Well, yeah, that's how we make the potatoes. We still plow the fields.
Got it.
At least in winter.
I didn't say that. All right. Cut. No, sorry. Okay. Okay, got it. All right, so, I was kidding. I'm not kidding. I can keep going.
Oh, keep going? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just seeing the river freeze over is not fun for me.
Yeah. No, it's not. Anyway, all right. So we have end of year planning. And there's not, I would say, like an overwhelming amount of stuff that has to be done in my mind. But there are things that can't be missed. And so, I have friends with other companies and they do like a review once a year. And, one of the reasons that we do reviews twice a year, while we originally started doing that, was for this reason. Because I didn't want to miss the opportunity to do a Roth conversion. I don't want to miss an opportunity to do any tax harvesting. And so those are two things where I'm like, if we don't have that meeting, then we miss it. And, there's nothing worse than like meeting with somebody in January and be like, oh man,
we should have done this.
Totally should have done this. Or, I didn't realize that your commissions were down 70% this year because it was a crazy year. Your income was so much lower. We could have done Roth conversions, but now we can't. Anyway, hope you had a good year.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. I don't know. What was your experience prior to?
Yeah, so I would agree. A lot of it is just, hey, how do we want to finish the year? I found a lot of the conversations are also, okay, what are we doing next year?
Right.
Okay, what tax changes? What are we looking out for? Hey, if our small business owners, if they are on cash accounting, okay, are we pushing things to the next year to, draw out taxes at least a little further?
Are we doing the 179 expense? Are we buying some big piece of machinery?
Yeah.
Got a friend that owns a dry cleaners, and he was disappointed that he couldn't buy any big machinery this year because his work area was totally full, which, crabby. And then I've got you know what? We'll keep going. I would say.
Do you want to share stories now?
Yeah, well, more like a fair amount of jealousy, right? So the client of ours, who shall remain nameless, who is give or take my age, who makes great money. And so, he does a lot of driving, from state to state, from Connecticut to Pennsylvania to everywhere else. And so he gets to buy this $150,000 car and write it completely off as a business expense. And I'm like, it's not fair. I want to do that. And then I look at my 3 kids and then I look at my back seat and I think, why would I ever entertain the idea of buying an expensive car? It will just get absolutely wrecked the next day. So there's that part of it. But, aside from that, I don't see a whole lot of it.
No.
I don't see a lot of because, in our business, we don't need to buy heavy equipment. We don't need a lot of those things that we could typically do. We definitely will look at profit sharing where appropriate. But we have other employees in the room. I don't want to talk about that because I don't want to give everybody money. Yeah. Our producer just put his hands up. No, not for you. But for everybody else, we'll do profit sharing. But, it's one of those scenarios where we have this excess money. It's like we either get taxed on it or we could give more to the employees, more to everybody we work with. So that's where I live.
Well, I feel like on our client's end, at least year end, like you mentioned, Roth conversions, tax loss harvesting, more life events, just so we can stay on top of it, things more than anything.
And I don't think there's going to be a ton of loss harvesting this year. So I really like individual stock portfolios because mutual funds like this, S&P is up 16, 17, 18% this year, and QQQ is up like 22, 23%. You have overall funds, those are fine, but you don't have any losses, and because everything has gone up. But when you have individual stocks, and this isn't great, but we have a few portfolios that have beaten the market, and whatever disclaimer in there, past performance isn't indicative of future value. Anyway, whatever thing, so that compliance doesn't nail me on this. But, from our point of view, it's like, all right, well, you pick a basket of 25, 30 stocks, you're going to have a couple losers. Like, that's kind of the idea. And so it's always interesting when you can kind of go through that and just take a little slice here and there to do some things to offset either taxes now or in the future. And so I always like playing that game, and I never want to miss that opportunity. And then, in years like in 2022, when we had significant downturn, right, where the NASDAQ was down by over 30%, that was really the time when a lot of people didn't take advantage of that stuff. And so we've been able to offset a lot of the future gains by playing that game.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what, at least the education side, when we meet clients, like, why are we selling in the markets kind of slightly down? Like, why are we buying into these other things?
Right.
Well, the idea, is, of course, what tax loss harvesting is. We sell things at a loss to keep the loss in our back pocket for down the road.
Right.
And so,
and if we have conviction in that stock, we can still pick it up in 30 days. What we don't want to do is sell into an earnings season, right? I mean, you don't want to sell something and then have it jump up by 10% like Amazon did the other day, which I may have owned a lot of at one point. Anyway, it doesn't still hurt. It's fine. Moving on.
No, not happy. Okay.
Yeah, it's no big deal. All right. So I think maybe if we go into some of the process of why we would or wouldn't do a Roth conversion would make sense.
Sure.
Okay. So, I mean, from my point of view, it's the basics, right? Do we have lower income this year than we normally do? Okay, opportunity for a Roth conversion. Either you've retired, you've got other pieces happening where this income was lower this year and you're still going to continue to work, or you're still working and you took a part-time job. Whenever that income decreases significantly, and one year we were putting money into the 401k and we're getting a 24% federal tax break, and now we can do a conversion and pay 12%. All right, great, that's an opportunity.
Or
I would say
OBBA, like zero, basically.
Yeah, tell me more. So how would that work?
So with the OBBA, since there's the temporary deductions now till 2028,
right,
we can convert a little bit more.
Because of the 6,000 exemption?
6,000 extra per person if its adjusted gross income is less than 150,000.
So the problem with that is then we have to be under that cap, right? We have to be under that piece when we do it. It's also the SALT cap deduction, right? It was raised from 10,000 to 40,000. But again, if we go too high on a Roth conversion, then we're taking away some of those deductions.
Correct. Yep.
So it's one of those scenarios where, like, yes, there's more room to do things as long as you, like, don't go too high. I feel like, I don't know, what was that game where you had to, I don't know if you ever played this. You had tweezers. Operation. There's a game, right? Where you had to go in and get something. Right. And you had to, like, pull up. If you went too far one side, it would start buzzing and you'd have to, okay. Like, that's what taxes are for me right now. It used to be fairly straightforward last year. Like, all right, here's the limits, here's the things, but there weren't, like, deductions that could trip you up. I mean, we always had IRMA. That was like a thing to worry about. IRMA's, when you pay extra money for Medicare because you made too much money. But now it's like, you've got different deductions that if you go over certain limits, all of a sudden you lose those. And, when we go through our software, we do our reviews for people, these are things that I'm glad that I get to see. Because if I had to do all this stuff by hand, I'd be kind of screwed.
Yeah, you don't like to do the math?
Not at all.
No.
Not even a little bit. No, and there's, like, more pieces to it, like, because different things, because now if you go over the limits, you're paying, what we look at is your marginal tax bracket, right? Like, what tax are you paying on the next, like, dollar you take out of the IRA, $1,000 you take out of the IRA. And so there was a point where, like, you could take out too much and cause Social Security to be taxed that wasn't taxed and cause capital gains to be taxed that wasn't taxed. Now, on top of that, you could have all those things happen and trigger a deduction that you were going to get that you're no longer going to get. So all of a sudden, like you're being taxed at 55% on the next $1,000, and it's like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And so, for us, if we don't map that stuff out,
Lose all the deductions at the same time.
Yeah.
Always fun.
So and I'll tell you, like most of the time, I don't find myself doing a lot of Roth conversions for people that are still working. Do you find yourself doing that?
Very small instances, very much more on like the commission side for a lot of our clients.
Tell me more. Oh, when they are commission working.
When they're commission based, yeah. So if they are having a lower year, say like a lot of our realtor clients, if demand's a lot lower, then yeah, it's a perfect opportunity to kind of squeeze some money in.
Or their base salary is 80,000, and then they were getting 200,000 in commission last year, and now they're getting 20. So yes, there's an opportunity where we can do it for sure. Okay. And then, of course, I think the other thing that can't be missed toward the end of the year are your required minimum distributions. It's kind
please don't miss those.
So what happens if we miss those? Like what happens to us?
What happens to us or the people?
Well, they blame us, so we have to deal with it. But
Correct.
What happens to them?
So they would pay a pretty steep penalty. I think right now, after 2025 now, I think it's 25% is the penalty that
So if you had
assessed.
to take out $10,000 for RMDs, that means you paid $2,500 in penalties, and you still have to take it out. And they still get you. Sorry.
And usually most people aren't going to want to take their cash out to pay a penalty, so we're taking more money out of the IRA, paying more in taxes.
Weird.
At the same time.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Okay. And then, yeah, there are other things. Like, one of the things that we talk about, and I wouldn't say it's more of an end of the year discussion, I'd say it's more of a middle of the year discussion. But we have a lot of clients that when they retire, they get these big payouts, right? Midway through the year, they retire in March, April, June. They get like a severance package. They get their PTO that they didn't get. They get, sometimes it's the deferred comp starts to hit. And so what we see is like the last year that somebody retires, all of a sudden they're making more income than they've made any other year, even if they've only worked for a couple months. And so sometimes it's like, if we're doing end of year planning, sometimes we're planning for them retiring the next year. It's like, hey, I know this is going to sound crazy, but don't take any of your paycheck in January and February. Defer it all. Take from your cash, live off of that, and then when you get all these payouts at the end, you can replenish all of your cash and then some. But there's no reason for you to not take that massive deduction in the year that you're going to retire. We want to make sure that you get that. It's really, I had a guy that made, it was like on average, like 250,000 a year. Great. And then the year that he retired, because of all of the different pieces that were hitting, it was 950.
That's crazy.
So all of a sudden, like, middle of 22% bracket to like full on 37% bracket, 7% state. I'm like, consider moving to Florida for a year. He's like, it's not worth it. My wife will kill me. Okay, great.
You pay me that much when I leave?
No. Can you pay me that much when I leave? I think I respectfully might leave before you.
Yeah, I think so. I don't see the problem.
Yeah, great. Thank you. You know what? I'll take it. And then QCDs. So QCDs are like a thing that people should know about. We go back to required distributions. You're forced to take money out every year. And what a lot of people do is we see them pay charities like $25 a month. They give to their church or, synagogue, whatever you got. And as long as it's a qualified charity, instead of having that money go from the IRA to your bank account and then go to the charity, you can have it go directly from the IRA to the charity, and it'll satisfy part of the required distribution, whatever amount you take out that goes. And also you are not taxed on that at all. So you don't have to meet certain limits. Now I think it's like the first 0.5% of whatever you make from charity doesn't discount the charity piece now, because I think that was part of the new rule from the OBBBA, if I recall correctly.
For cash contributions?
For charitable contributions. So I think it's the first, and don't quote me on this, even though you're listening to the podcast for this information, because it just came up off the top of my head. But I believe, or maybe it was floated, and I'll have to double check and fact check.
I believe that was floated.
The first 0.5%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because I know the limit is 100 if you're single, 106, and then 212 for each year is the QCD maximum.
The QCD for regular charitable distributions. So the QCD, all of that is counted. But if you're doing regular charitable deductions, hang on a minute. I'm going to look it up.
Yeah.
So according to uscharitablegifttrust.org, and I'm going to do a direct quote here, OBBBA makes permanent part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that limits cash donations to 60% of adjusted gross income to public charities. And starting in 2026, the following new items will impact charitable deductions. A 0.5% floor on charitable deductions. A 0.5% floor on charitable deductions for individuals permits them to claim itemized deductions before the typical AGI limits of contributions to a public charity. For AGI cash, 30%.
Okay.
A donor with a $100,000 contribution base will lose $500 of their itemized charitable deductions, while a donor with $200,000 base will lose $1,000 of itemized charitable deductions. So yeah, the first 0.5%. Not overwhelming, but I think that was the idea of like taking some of that off. So it actually makes the QCD more impactful because of that direct piece. Doesn't hurt.
Yeah, plus it makes an impact. Like one of our clients bought his church in Oregon.
Really?
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. From the QCD?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, it was also like the Oregon was like $100,000.
Oh, wow.
So it was a good amount.
Yeah, wow. That is not insignificant. I thought aren't there limits up to $100,000 for the QCD?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he just hit the limit.
Married is 200 and change.
Okay. Got
a
it.
year.
So he's married. Got it.
Correct.
Not my client.
No.
None of my clients are that nice. At least I don't think so. All right. So big picture mistakes. Tell me, what do you think are some of the missed opportunities that people make or that you've seen other people have?
Sure. Especially with this OBVA. A lot of accountants are just trying to get you the lowest return possible, or the most return, the lowest taxes due possible.
Okay.
And sometimes they aren't telling you that, hey, we still have about this much room in this tax bracket, still paying no taxes, state or federal. Let's use that up.
Right.
And so that's a perfect opportunity for any of these Roth conversions or goals down the road.
Sure.
And so that's just where I see a disconnect between like an accountant and a planner, because us as planners, we're looking at all these pieces. The accountant's only looking at this piece.
From year to year.
And so we're just trying to kind of go back and forth and say, well, what does make the most sense for this client?
Yeah, and I don't want to generalize and say like every accountant is like that, because I definitely know some accountants that do specific tax planning, but my experience has always been that, like you said, they'll focus on the year ahead of them, right? How do we minimize taxes this year for this client, instead of like, what is the long-term impact of deferring all this money? Let's go back to that guy that's earning a lot of money and is my age. He's reducing a lot of his taxes. There are different things that we can do to reduce his taxes. Like we created a deferred account for him. He's got a solo 401k. He's able to defer like $170,000 a year, which is significant because he's single. He's in the highest tax bracket. Like these are things that we're doing to reduce that. But there's also a future problem where, hey man, you contribute $170,000 a year for the next 20 years. That's just contributions, not including the growth that we're getting on that, which is significant. You're going to have a massive tax problem when it comes time for you to be forced to start taking this money out. And so is there something that we can be doing where we're offsetting some and we're moving others, right? Where we're taking out all that money above maybe the 37% bracket or above the 32% bracket and then able to convert also. So it's that kind of combined piece that gives us opportunity.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say the other thing that people don't recognize as much, and I wouldn't expect them to normally, are the Connecticut tax brackets, right? Like, in Connecticut, they made it so that you don't have to pay taxes on Social Security or IRA withdrawals or pension income as long as you're under certain thresholds. If you're a single person, under $75,000. If you're a married couple filing jointly, under $100,000. And it used to be that if you were a single person and you made $75,001, now you're paying state taxes on everything. And I saw that one time with a married couple. They came in and I saw their tax return and they're like, oh my gosh, we didn't think we had to pay state taxes. And they made $101,000. Their adjusted gross income was $101,000. And had it been $1,100 less, right? $99,900, they wouldn't have paid any state taxes. So all of a sudden that pushed them over the limit and that caused them to pay like another $4,000 or so to the state when little things could have avoided it. So, there are a lot of like simple mistakes that people make that cost them just a lot of money that when we come over, we make sure that we're monitoring and taking care of.
And I think the other piece is just showing the client, like, hey, this is what this will do. Like,
right.
do we want to do this? Do we want to do more, less? Like here are the pros and cons.
For sure.
This is what ultimately we would recommend.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and then you make the decision, right? If you want to pay this money, that's fine. If you want to do, like, even when it comes to Roth conversions, sometimes we have conversations where, like, listen, this is what the penalties are. This is what you're not going to get from exemptions this year. We still recommend you do it anyway, because if you don't do it now, you're going to pay a whole lot more later, right? Sometimes it's not great news and it's not the perfect solution, but it's still like, here's our recommendation. And sometimes that recommendation is like, pay a whole lot more money in taxes than you were planning to. And I'm sorry, but it's either now and then you can get that money into something that will then grow tax-free forever, or it's later and it doesn't get to grow tax-free. And so it's, if we rip off the Band-Aid or if we start moving these things, and, I tell people all the time when it comes to Roth conversions, it's not in our best interest to have you do Roth conversions. Why? Great question. Thank you for asking.
I could ask, but okay.
Yeah. I just assume you know anyway.
Okay,
So
right.
Am I wrong? No.
I know. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, when we do Roth conversions, we're moving something over from, let's say it's the 22% bracket, right? We're moving $100,000 over from a place where you haven't paid taxes on it, and we get to charge money on $100,000, and then move it over to the Roth, and all of a sudden we have to pay state and federal taxes, let's call it 25%, just to make the math easy. So now we're charging 25% on 25% less money, which means we're making 25% less on our fees. It is not in our best interest to have you do Roth conversions. It's honestly not in almost any financial planner's best interest to have you do Roth conversions, unless it's inside of an annuity. And that's why you see a lot of that. But I don't like Roth inside of an annuity. Anyway, that's a me thing. So, it's one thing to talk about being a fiduciary. I think one of the ways that we show that we are being fiduciaries is by making recommendations that actively reduce the amount of income that we receive. And that's always going to be the most important thing when you come to us.
Yeah. And I think ultimately it helps the client at the end.
Yeah. I mean, without question. I think that the only reason that we do it is to help the client. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this edition of Fuchs Around and Cal 'em Out. I'm Ben Fuchs.
I'm Alex Cal.
And that's all we got. Have a good day. Hey everyone, thank you for watching this episode of Fuchs Around and Cal Them Out. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like on the video and hit the subscribe button so you get notified when we upload our next episode.